Why is it that the original Jedi Order abandoned their code? Is it true that it led them to the dark side? Greetings again, curious acolytes of the Force, and welcome back to our archives. The first Jedi film promises to explore an era in Star Wars which doesn't get much attention at all, which is right at the birth of the Republic and the very Jedi themselves. The very beginnings of the Republic and the Jedi Order is something of a mystery, though it was indeed explored in Legends continuity to some extent. The Dawn of the Jedi comic run gave us an insight into the ancient Jedi Order and how the Rakatan Empire was finally defeated, exploring the dawn of the Force and the beginning of the Jedi as we know them today. This event took place almost 1,000 years prior to the first Great Schism of the Jedi Order, as well as around 18,000 years before the Second Great Schism, which would eventually culminate in the birth of the Sith. This ancient order of mystics prided themselves on knowing the energy of the Force, as they maintained a perfect balance between the light and the dark, which they referred to respectively as the Ashla and the Bogan. It was in their original code that reflects this strive for balance. However, there would come a time when the Jedi would abandon this code in favor of going purely to the light side, as the Jedi began to have a growing fear of Bogan, or the darkness. So what was this original abandoned Jedi code? And was it dangerous as they believed it to be? Well, my friends, we are going to open up yet another holocron and figure it out for ourselves, as well as hopefully shine some light on the first Jedi and the film that could result from their origins. But before we begin, the Master of the Archives has felt a disturbance. Many of the viewers accessing our holocrons have not yet subscribed to the Order. We are uploading knowledge about deep lore every single day, and covering the latest news in a galaxy far, far away. So if you want to be a part of that, then reach out and force crush that subscribe button and become an acolyte. Now, my friends, let us begin. First, let us compare the two codes. The Jedi Code is famous for its absolute nature, a very strict mantra which governed the behavior and thought of the life of the Order. This goes as follows. The current Jedi Code. There is no emotion, there is peace. There is no ignorance, there is knowledge. There is no passion, there is serenity. There is no chaos, there is harmony. There is no death, there is the Force. This code, however, is oftentimes misinterpreted, with some believing that the Jedi operate as heartless robots, or simply live in denial of the true nature of life itself. The code is how the Order approaches the Force in their mindset. The nature of the light side is to strive for peace and balance in all things. When you analyze the code, each line actually builds off of the other. A Jedi is meant to follow the code like a step-by-step guide. When concerning having no emotion but peace, a Jedi is to calm their mind in all circumstances so that they can have a clear view of the Force and what is in front of them. There is no ignorance, there is knowledge. This means to expel all notions of self-doubt and confusion. When you get your answer, do not act in passion, but act with serenity in your next step. And when everything begins, do not find yourself swept up in chaos of the moment, but in the harmony of the situation, and take action decisively. And should you die in your duty, remember that death is never the end, but that you will pass into the vastness of the Force. And this is the essence of the Jedi Code. Qui-Gon Jinn was a Jedi that only followed the living Force, and interpreted this to mean that the Force guides him in a pursuit of balance, the decision to either save a life or to destroy it. Qui-Gon unapologetically broke any rule or law, as in his eyes, the will of the living Force supersedes any laws by mortal beings. This made him a controversial yet honorable figure. Other Jedi interpreted the code much differently, such as Ki-Adi-Mundi, who was far more legalistic with the code itself. Following the code and not looking deeper into it severed his connection to many people, and led to complete and utter detachment from all things, to the point where he would not even grieve for those that passed on. In these examples, we can sort of see these two extremes of following the code, and yet both Jedi remain steadfastly rooted in the light side. So what was the ancient Jedi Code, and what did give cause for concern with the original interpretation? The original code was as follows. There is no ignorance, there is knowledge. There is no fear, there is power. I am the heart of the Force. I am the revealing fire of light. I am the mystery of darkness, in balance with chaos and harmony, immortal in the Force. This was the way of the ancient Jedi, and we can already see the foundations of the Jedi Code planted within. The Jedi Code was founded on the beliefs of the Dai Bendu, which were the first mystics to actually study the Force and discover the existence of the midichlorians. When the Dai Bendu and other species arrived on Tython in the Thoyor ships, the Dai Bendu would be the ones that molded the code and the new order by using their philosophies. Tython itself was a planet that was prone to violent Force storms, which often took heavy tolls on the population whenever the Force was not in balance, and the Jedi had to make sure that they were all keeping in the balance with both Ashla and Bogan, so that Tython itself would not utterly destroy them. The Jedi Code of this time reflects this balance, but not only that, it also reflects the mindset that the Jedi had, and how they approached discovering and pioneering the Force itself. In this point in history, the Force had never been manipulated or tapped into, and therefore this led to trial and error. They had to figure out what worked and what didn't, and they drew upon either the light or the dark side to come to their conclusions. This is where it comes. There is no ignorance, only knowledge. This is also why they had to say that there was no fear, there was only power. This line seems to be stemmed in the dark side, but rather it symbolizes that no matter what happened, they needn't fear the Force, but only understand its power in order to learn. Darth Sidious once said, "The Jedi gain power through understanding, the Sith gain understanding through power." What's interesting is that the ancient Jedi were somewhat of both. They utilized the power to gain an understanding of the Force, and then built upon that understanding to gain more power. This is why they say, "I am the revealing fire of light. I am the mystery of the darkness." They acknowledge that there is only so much that they can understand. Moving on, and looking at the different side of things, Obi-Wan Kenobi once said this: "We speak of the will of the Force as someone ignorant of gravity, as they might say it was the will of a river to flow to the ocean. It is a metaphor that describes our ignorance." What the Jedi do know is that balance of chaos and harmony must be maintained, and it was in this way that these ancient Jedi were able to learn Force lightning and other tactics used by the dark side, as well as abilities such as Force healing of the light, using Ashla and Bogan in harmony with one another, like two sides of a saber staff. So then, what happened? Why did the Jedi abandon their original code? As the Order progressed, they forgot the line in the code that said there was no fear, but only power, and became afraid of the dark side. They were exposed to dangerous aspects of the Force by the Rakatan Empire, and the true nature of the darkness. The very weapons that they displayed to them in the Force sabers relied on the dark side in order to activate, and once the Jedi started implementing the Force saber into their ranks, they realized how dangerous the weapon was, and how close it brought them to being too far gone in a warlike warrior mindset. The Jedi also raised arms against the Rakatan Empire, which would be the first time that they would become like a military and become warriors. This sudden shift in balance of the Force in this whole war created basically the end of Tython, as it was thrown into an eternal storm that was ripping itself apart. This forced the Jedi Order to relocate to the world of Ossus, and it was there that they rebranded themselves into the Holy Order of the Jedi Knights, and began to become more involved in the galactic affairs of the wider galaxies and systems in need. Over the course of time, they would start to drift more towards the light side, as the things of Bogan that they used to deem worthy were called into question. They began to fear the dark side and its many followers, and this would all boil to a head in the year 24,500 BBY, which was the beginning of the first great schism of the Jedi Order, as the Order broke into two parts. The Dark Jedi were born, who followed the dark side exclusively, and therefore the Jedi that remained staunchly opposed the darkness entirely. So, was it the original code that caused many of the members to fall to the dark side? The answer is no. But the absence of a neutral governing power to keep the Jedi in check caused their members to fall too hard to either the light or the darkness. The original Jedi code was correct, however, extreme stances formed, and the code was eventually abandoned and lost to time. Balance itself being lost. But anyway, my friends, what are your thoughts about this? And what is your opinion on the ancient Jedi code? Do you believe that balance is more important than anything? And were the Jedi wrong?